Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first public meeting for the proposed Downtown Heritage Conservation District. My name is Elizabeth Cushing, and I'm a heritage planning researcher with HRM, and I'll be the moderator for this evening. We'll start with some general housekeeping items, followed by a staff presentation and a Q&A session. Next slide, please. So before we begin, we'll provide a brief overview on how to use Microsoft Teams. So if you'd like to use closed captioning for tonight's session, please click the CC button in the right corner of your screen. Next slide, please. And if you need to leave the session at any time, click the Leave button on the upper right corner of your screen. The link to the session will remain active throughout the event, so you can return later if you like. Alternatively, the session will be recorded and posted on the Shape Your City website. Next slide, please. So this session is to answer any questions you may have and to gather your feedback. You can submit questions and comments throughout the session using the chat screen to the right of the presentation by clicking the Ask a Question button. Next slide, please. And the minutes from the session will be on the public record. You are welcome to include your name with your question, but you may also post anonymously by checking the Post as Anonymous box in the Q&A. Next slide, please. You may then type your question where it says Ask a Question. We'll direct the question to our panel of contributors. Next slide, please. So we'll start tonight's meeting with a staff presentation, followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions to our panel. HRM Heritage Advisory Committee members are also in attendance and will be taking into consideration your questions and comments. And they'll also be updated regularly throughout the engagement process. So in addition to this session, we encourage everyone to visit the project website at Shape Your City to participate in our other engagement tools, including our survey, or to submit any other comments or questions that you may have. We'll be gathering public feedback for 1 year until summer 2022. So without further ado, I'll introduce our presenter this evening, Seamus McGreal, who is a senior heritage planner with HRM.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I believe I'm live now. So I'll begin the presentation. As Elizabeth mentioned, my name is Seamus McGrail. I'm a senior heritage planner with the Heritage Property Program at the Halifax Regional Municipality Planning and Development Department. So we'll start this presentation off by answering the question, why establish a new heritage conservation district in downtown Halifax? So today, downtown Halifax is experiencing a great deal of pressure for development as it contains some of the most valuable real estate in Halifax, given its location and the land use permissions that enable this kind of development in the downtown. The Cogswell redevelopment project in the precinct north of the proposed downtown Halifax HCD may spur even more development interest in the downtown, and it may lead to even more change in the built environment in this area. It's important to mention that heritage registration and the establishment of heritage conservation districts are very effective tools at protecting our heritage resources and heritage buildings. Since 2003, there's only been one demolition carried out of a registered heritage building in HRM. So out of our entire inventory of over 500 heritage buildings, only one demolition took place back in 2003. So registration and the establishment of a heritage conservation district are effective tools. Heritage Conservation District, there's only been one demolition since 2009 within an established Heritage Conservation District. So why are we seeing so much demolition and change in when it comes to traditional buildings in the downtown? Well, these buildings are largely unregistered and therefore unprotected, or they're outside of a heritage conservation district, and as such they are unprotected from demolition. A benchmark study was done along with the adoption of the 2009 Downtown Plan, where just over 100 heritage buildings with potential for registration were identified on a map. And since 2009, about half of these buildings have been demolished since 2009. So this is the change we're seeing in downtown Halifax. It's a loss of potential heritage buildings, not registered buildings, and not buildings within a heritage conservation district. And these buildings have been replaced with modern development that is not necessarily in keeping with the traditional character of downtown Halifax. So we are seeing this change in modernization in the downtown. So there is merit for an heritage conservation district and for conservation measures to be applied to the downtown of Halifax to preserve not only the remaining unregistered heritage properties, but also to retain the character, to ensure that new development is built in a way that is appropriate to the character of downtown Halifax. Next slide, please. So Heritage Conservation District is a defined area. It's also known as an HCD. It's a defined area within a boundary that we establish, and it has historic or architectural value to the region. It is protected by regulations governing such things as exterior alterations, design guidelines for new development, and protection from demolition. A conservation plan and bylaw may be accompanied by changes to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw, and in this case, we will be making changes to the land use bylaw to accommodate and implement the goals of the Heritage Conservation District. We currently have 3 heritage conservation districts established in HRM. They're all within or just near the downtown. Barrington Street is our oldest, established in 2009. Schmidtville, established in 2018, in Old South Suburb, established just last year in 2020. Schmidtville contains 15 registered heritage buildings and 140 unregistered heritage buildings that are now protected indefinitely from demolition or inappropriate change. Barrington Street contains 20 registered heritage buildings and 20 unregistered heritage buildings that are protected from things like demolition or inappropriate alteration. And the Old South Suburb contains 40 registered heritage buildings. In addition to that, it contains 25 unregistered heritage buildings, which are now protected indefinitely from demolition. Next slide, please. So what we're proposing for this new Heritage Conservation District is to consolidate the 2 existing Heritage Conservation Districts of Old South Suburb and Barrington Street, and to add a new area called the Capital that you see outlined in green here. And the new consolidated plan will be referred to as the Downtown Halifax Heritage Conservation District. So the new area that we're referring to as the Capital contains 85 registered heritage buildings and a handful of traditional buildings and modern heritage, open spaces, and wharves as well that we're interested in extending some form of heritage protection to as well. The HCD plan will establish consistency in the administration of the heritage policies and programs affecting the existing HCDs in downtown Halifax by establishing a new area. This capital area will be consolidated with the Old South Suburb and Barrington Street. And we'll be looking at establishing consistency between the policies and programs for these districts. As you can imagine, Barrington Street was established in 2009. Old South Suburb was established in 2020. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in terms of how we administer the programs and policies. And this is an opportunity for us to introduce some consistency under the umbrella of one large plan with 3 separate areas. You can think of them as 3 separate chapters to a larger plan. And we'll do this by repealing the existing heritage conservation districts and readopting them with this new capital area. Next slide, please. So what is so significant about downtown Halifax? Why are we establishing this Heritage Conservation District? The value of downtown Halifax as a Heritage Conservation District lies in its significant role in the economic, social, and political development of not only our region and province, but of our nation as well. The capital area, together with the rest of the area between Citadel Hill and the harbour, is the oldest historic area associated with the original town of Halifax, established in 1749. The downtown, the capital, is an exemplary agora of the old town of Halifax. An agora in ancient Hellenic cities was an area used for public assemblies and markets. So if there's an agora in HRM, it is the capital area of downtown Halifax. The streets surrounding Province House and the waterfront continue to serve public assemblies, including political and recreational gatherings. Commercial establishments around Province House, particularly Granville Mall, and the waterfront continue to serve as local markets. Today, the capital area also functions as the northern gateway into the historic town of Halifax. The Barrington Street area, it's valued for its history and architecture, and its evolution as Halifax's principal downtown commercial street for over 250 years. The buildings, which occupy the 4 blocks between the Grand Parade and Old Burying Ground, reflect the evolution of Barrington Street as a city's center of commerce from its early 19th century beginnings to its blossoming in the late 19th century and early mid-20th century, and its decline in the late 20th century, and currently its revitalization as the historic commercial heart of downtown Halifax. The Old South Suburb value lies in its historic associations with the early settlement of Nova Scotia, and as the first contiguous suburb of the fortified town. Is an area of early traditional residential architecture, particularly Georgian architecture. Its heritage value also lies in its historic associations with the social and economic life of the waterfront city and the vibrant railway industries of the 1920s and 30s. Next slide, please. So in terms of this project, it's broken down into 3 main phases. The first phase was developing a background study for the proposed district. This background study looked at the rationale for creating the district. We inventoried the properties within the district and looked at some of the social and economic implications of it and goals for establishing this district. This background study was approved back in May of 2021. And it's important for us under the Heritage Property Act to retain some consistency with what the scope of the project established under the background study as we approach the planning and community engagement for this project. We are now approaching the planning and community engagement phase. This meeting is really the first step in this phase, holding this first public meeting. It's one of the conditions of our public participation program. There'll be another meeting like this in the summer of next year, where we'll be introducing the draft documents to the public and getting more detailed feedback from the public in terms of what directions we should take. We're estimated that this phase of planning and community engagement will be complete in September of 2022. And then we will move into the review and adoption phase. So the documents will be reviewed by 3 committees. That'll be the Heritage Advisory Committee, Community Planning and Economic Development, and Design Review. And these committees will provide a recommendation to Regional Council. There will be a public hearing before any decision is made on adopting the documents, and we estimate that this will be complete by May of 2023. So a 2-year process from start to finish. Next slide, please. So the goals as set out in the background study that we're working with, there are 4 main goals. The first primary goal is to conserve the historic integrity of downtown Halifax. So this means strengthening protection of registered heritage properties, as well as extending protection to unregistered historic buildings. This will include some of the modern heritage of downtown Halifax, as well as its open spaces, waterfronts, wharves. We're looking at extending protection to resources other than buildings, and appropriately integrated development as well. So how to establish rules to ensure that any changes to historic buildings are appropriate. The second goal is to accommodate residents and visitors by revitalizing aging buildings and by encouraging new development that complements the scale and character of the areas of downtown Halifax. So we're looking at policies to make revitalization of aging building stock attractive, either through incentives or land use incentives, financial incentives. Looking at street wall heights, step backs, setbacks, determining what's appropriate for the downtown, and encouraging new development, new infill development where appropriate as well. So if there's opportunities to include more, to accommodate more space in the district, we'll certainly be looking at that as well. The third goal is to promote the downtown as a cultural heritage destination. We'll be looking at what existing elements in the right of way, in the streets, are important to preserve, and what kind of elements we can add to complement the existing elements and to really promote the area as a historic environment that visitors should visit, to promote local businesses, and to make it an attractive place to live as well. And the fourth goal is to establish consistent policies and programs that also address the unique challenges of each individual area of the capital, Old South Suburb and Barrington Street. We'll be integrating the boundaries into one larger area and one larger plan, and we'll be establishing master policies that apply to all three to establish consistency, but also recognizing that we need to tailor certain policies to the needs of the three different areas, which are quite different in terms of their built form. Next slide, please. So I'll just go through these goals in a little bit more detail. So the primary goal of the HCD will be to conserve the integrity of downtown Halifax. There's many registered heritage properties in this area, as well as many unregistered historic buildings and open spaces. The HCD will strengthen policies concerning demolition, substantial alteration for all significant heritage resources, and include policies to define appropriate and inappropriate interventions. The HCD will define parameters for appropriately integrated development and encourage it with financial and land use incentives. So we'll be looking at and hoping to get feedback from stakeholders and the public at large on what kind of measures we can use to protect some of our modern buildings, like the Joseph Howe building. Do we need to protect international style buildings, modernist buildings like that? The law courts, for example, brutalist structures like that. Is there merit in extending heritage protection to these modern heritage buildings and spaces? The concrete bridge over Lower Water Street, is that a heritage asset that merits protection? The wharves, should development be allowed on the waterfront open spaces and on the wharves themselves? Are these cultural artifacts that deserve some merit of protection and oversight by regional council? So these are some of the questions we'll be asking in terms of conserving historic integrity. And really it comes down to sustainable development. If we conserve large buildings and convert them into usable space, it's a form of sustainable development. Next slide, please. So getting back to the second goal of accommodating space. So we'll be doing this through establishing policies for building revitalization, like the Canada Permanent building that you see here along Barrington Street. The city invested $500,000 to help the developer convert this office space into residential space. And you see the Sam the Record Man building just to the right of the Canada Permanent building there. There's an infill project where a few stories were added on top of some historic buildings. This kind of very appropriate infill that is sort of concealed in behind the heritage building is something appropriate that we're hoping to learn from and extend to other areas in the district. We'll be looking at things like street wall heights, step backs, setbacks, and redefining these districts to ensure that they're consistent with the traditional character of the area. The HCD will review the development framework and introduce parameters to the area that support the historic setting and encourage new development where appropriate. Facadism is going to be a big question. So if you look at the waterside development, is that an appropriate intervention on historic resources? To what extent is that development appropriate or not? And looking at grant programs to support rehabilitation of aging building stock as well. Next slide, please. The third goal, the HCD will improve historic setting by retaining existing elements in the public realm and by investing in additional street elements that promote the capital, Old South Suburb, and the Barrington Street areas. So really looking at something similar to what was done on Argyle Street or what is now being done on Spring Garden Road. What kind of right-of-way investments, streetscape investments can we make to these areas to really drive this area as a cultural heritage destination? So we'll be ensuring that the heritage officer, heritage staff, regional council have some oversight to changes made to the streetscape and in the public realm to ensure that it's highlighted as a heritage destination. Things like investments in public art, street lights, street furniture, traffic control measures as well. There's some discussion about preserving granite curbs, preservation of trees and planting of new trees, especially on the Old South Suburb. So anything right-of-way related, we'll ensure that heritage staff has some in this HCD plan has some oversight on. Next slide, please. And finally, this last goal of establishing consistent policies in the three areas. So the HCD will integrate the boundaries of the three areas, and along with the new area, the capital area. The existing HCD plans and their policies will be repealed, and these areas will be adopted along with the capital area as part of a new HCD plan. This new plan will establish consistency in the administration of heritage policies affecting these areas. There will also be area-specific policies to address the challenges and needs which are unique to each area. So this is really where the details will come out. The Old South Suburb and Barrington Street are within the downtown plan area. The idea is to consolidate this downtown Halifax plan area with the regional center plan that is underway right now. So we'll be making amendments to the regional center plan to incorporate these districts with that plan, and we're making amendments and hopefully to establish some consistency throughout the different areas. Next slide, please. So in terms of the social and economic benefits of establishing a heritage conservation district in downtown Halifax, there are many benefits that come along with establishing a heritage conservation district. We'll be conserving the cultural and historic integrity of the area, encouraging cultural heritage tourism in downtown Halifax, which will help hopefully help retail businesses, restaurants, shops, driving more foot traffic through the area. Promotes a form of sustainable development by adapting existing buildings to modern needs. So not making demolition the go-to development solution, encouraging the reuse of buildings, the embodied energy within those buildings, which will help mitigate and climate change. Use educational materials to promote the history of Halifax in Nova Scotia. So this could be a hub where people have an opportunity to learn about history of the city and province through interpretive panels, through online apps and things like that. And financial incentives. We have a financial incentives program in place for the Old South Suburb. in Schmidtville right now. There was a very successful program that saw over $3.5 million invested over a period of 10 years in Barrington Street, leading to the revitalized street that you see today. So we're looking to doing something similar to that to help the capital area and these other areas as well. And it is to hope that the plan will strengthen community and neighborhood identity and conserve a pleasant human scale built environment and encourage the development of a complete community within a walkable urban setting. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand things back to my colleague Elizabeth now. I'll encourage you to visit the website. If you respond to the survey, your email information will be added to a mailing list, and we'll be able to keep you up to date on the process that way. Elizabeth, I'll hand things back to you.
Thank you, Seamus. So as he mentioned, we encourage everyone to visit the project website at shapeyourcityhalifax.ca to learn more about the project and to ask questions, join the mailing list, and to generally provide your input. You can also contact Seamus via email or phone as listed in the slide here. A video recording of this presentation will also be posted on the Shape Your City Halifax website. Next slide, please. So we'll now move on to the Q&A portion of our presentation. Our panelists this evening are Seamus McGreal, Senior Heritage Planner, and Erin Murnahan, Principal Heritage Planner. Please use the Ask a Question function to the right of your screen to submit any questions that you may have. And if you prefer to submit your questions privately, feel free to send them to Seamus via the Shape Your City website. Next slide, please. We do have one question here from the public. I'll direct it to Seamus, and he's asking, will there be an absolute moratorium on all demolitions from now to the public hearing in 2023 in the entire capital heritage area?
Thanks for your question. Very good question. This is something that came forward when we were doing the Schmidtville and Old South Suburb Heritage Conservation Districts, this idea of creating a moratorium to ensure that no inappropriate development or demolition takes place while we're trying to prepare the plans. Unfortunately, there's no provision under the Provincial Heritage Property Act that will allow us as a municipality to create this kind of moratorium. We simply don't have the delegated authority to do that under the Heritage Property Act. Our mayor and council did write a letter to the province asking for changes to the Heritage Property Act to allow for this kind of moratorium, but there's still no such provision in place. So it is a bit of a situation where we want to get this Heritage Conservation District plan created quickly to ensure that there's no loss of heritage resources or character while we're preparing the planning documents. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Seamus. Now I'll direct the next question to Erin. How does HCD designation strengthen protection for buildings that are already registered as heritage properties?
Thanks, Elizabeth. So right now there are some limitations to the protection that the Heritage Property Act provides to registered properties. Currently, under the Act, a property owner can simply wait 3 years after unsuccessfully requesting to demolish the building. And after that 3rd year's passed, they can simply demolish or make alterations to their building without the permission of Halifax Regional Council. So being within a heritage conservation district provides another level of protection. It actually means in many cases that the regional council has to provide that permission in order for a building to be demolished at all or to be altered. So it's the strongest level of protection that we have under provincial legislation, and something that we feel is needed in downtown Halifax.
Great, thanks, Erin. And next question for Seamus would be, how long will the online engagement survey be active, and what have you heard so far from the public through the survey?
Great, thank you. The community engagement survey, it's a very short survey that's on Shaper City now. It'll be online until July 31st, and we'll be bringing it offline then. We've received about 160 responses so far to the survey, which is more than we expected. It's good news. So what we're hearing from the public is that most of the respondents are who are participating in the survey are from outside of the district, so they're just members of the general public interested in the downtown heritage district. They don't live there or operate businesses there or own property. They're simply interested in this area. So there's a lot of interest from the general public. Most of the respondents are identified as just general members of the public. A lot of people saying they like surveys, so they like to be asked specific closed questions instead of open questions like share your ideas or put your ideas on a map. They would prefer to see more survey type engagements. So this is something we'll likely do leading up to the draft Heritage Conservation District. We'll probably create a survey with specific ABC choices or yes or no answers, things like that. It seems to be what people are asking for, that kind of specific type of engagement. And what we're hearing is there's a lot of support. Nobody is really saying tear everything down and rebuild from scratch. That doesn't seem to be a real opinion that everyone have. People recognize that we need to work within the built form, the traditional built form that's in place now, and develop a plan that is tailored to protecting our heritage resources and character of the downtown. So we've heard some good news so far. So this survey will be taken offline on July 31st. So if you haven't responded yet, I'd encourage you to do so, to get your name on the email, on the mailing list, and to provide your initial feedback. There's also the share your ideas and pin your ideas on a map tool that will be available from now until next summer. So those open formats will be online. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Seamus. The next question is for Aaron. It says, I see lots of reference to the promotion of culture and the word heritage comes up a lot. Can you speak on how you will promote and celebrate the diverse cultural heritage of the city and these areas?
Sure, thanks, Elizabeth. So right now, simultaneous with this project, HRM is also working on the Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan, known as Sharing Our Stories. And that's going to create a new strategic policy direction for the municipality on issues of culture and heritage, to bring some consistency to our policies, but also to bring them really into the 21st century. And some of the initiatives coming out of that Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan will include new projects on interpretation and commemoration throughout the municipality, and that could include new promotional material, new actual interpretive signage popping up around the municipality, things online as well that people can access remotely. But that will tie in to a lot of the streetscaping projects that will likely take place as part of the new Downtown Heritage Conservation District. You'll likely see more opportunities for interpretation, and we'll also be taking more of an equitable and diversity lens to some of the history and the stories that we tell as a municipality. So those interpretive signs that you see, the opportunities for commemorating different stories will be much more diverse moving forward. And I think downtown Halifax certainly has a very high density of interesting stories to tell.
Definitely, thanks, Eric. Our next question is famous, and that is, will you include the Halifax Memorial Library, St. Mary's Basilica, and Courthouse in the Capital District?
Thank you for the question, William. The St. Mary's Basilica will certainly be in the district. It's within the Heritage Conservation District of Barrington Street right now. and it will continue to be within the new Heritage Conservation District. The courthouse is currently outside the boundaries of the proposed district, and the memorial library as well. Both of those properties are registered heritage properties. As you know, the memorial library was just registered as a heritage site, I think late last year. So those are protected. There hasn't been much talk of including them within the district, but it's something we could consider through the process of extending protection or extending the boundaries to areas that are that close. But it's something that we can consider through the process. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Seamus. Our next question will go to Aaron. And is the planned new Art Gallery Nova Scotia on the waterfront already accepted as important to the plan?
Absolutely. So it's important to note that properties that are owned by the province does have the ability to opt out of the Heritage Conservation District plan and having those regulations apply to their properties. We aren't really privy to the plans going forward for the existing Art Gallery of Nova Scotia or other properties that might be owned by the province, but we would certainly invite them to participate in protecting this important part of the city with us. And certainly those buildings provide a bit of a backbone for the new district, connecting the capital area with the rest of historic downtown Halifax. And certainly are very important pieces of architecture and very important historic buildings. So the hope is that they will be included in our district moving forward.
Thank you, Aaron. One moment while I go through lots of questions coming in, which is great to see. Seamus, this question's for you. Will the historic markers removed due to the Maritime Centre renovations be placed?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, we as heritage staff, we have been following what's happening to the site there around the Maritime Centre, and we'll certainly ensure that that any changes that were made because of those renos are rectified. And we'll be working with if there's any loss of character defining elements on the site. We'll certainly be working with the property owners and developers to ensure that things are rectified once the renovations are made to the Maritime Centre. Thank you.
And I should note that we have been in contact with the property owner and that the wall and other elements of that property will be restored at the end of the construction.
It's good to know. Thanks, Aaron. And I'll direct the next question to you, Aaron. Will there be protection considered for the 1812 right-of-way on Salter and Morris from lower water to the water's edge at the harbour?
So I would say that would certainly be something that we could consider. I might defer to Seamus to follow up on this question, just if there was anything that came out of the initial historic analysis that included information on those 1812 right-of-ways. But that's exactly the type of historic element that we would like to try and preserve through the Heritage Conservation District plan, including the original 1749 street grid of downtown Halifax, which over the last 60 years has been eroded somewhat through creating super blocks and conjoining blocks together. So certainly something we would try and preserve, and certainly keeping that public access to the waterfront and those historic views down those east-west streets toward the harbor from Citadel Hill.
Yeah, I would just concur with Aaron. This is the kind of feedback we're interested in. And it's not just about protecting heritage buildings, but also the spaces, the open spaces, the wharves, accessibility. If you look at the definition under the Heritage Property Act of what what heritage value is, it's obviously more than just buildings. It can apply to cultural uses, uses of land, and it's certainly something that we could create policies for in the Heritage Conservation District.
Great, thank you both. Our next question will be for Seamus, and it's how will historic military history locations be recognized in this district?
So we're working to protect an inventory of heritage resources, but also to establish future interpretive programs to highlight and to educate the public about the importance of these heritage resources. So if any of the heritage resources, like the buildings or the spaces, have a significance to military history, it's certainly something we can highlight through future interpretive programs, and we can create policies that will ensure that we address certain aspects of military history in an interpretive program in the future, like the Sackville Landing, for example, and the HMCS Sackville that is docked nearby. It's something that those are important heritage resources to the district, and any interpretive programming that is associated with the district in the future can certainly highlight the military heritage of the HMCS Sackville and in other aspects of our military history. Thanks.
And I should note as well that this project is going to be closely aligned with the Cogswell project, the Cogswell District project. And there will be a significant commemorative and interpretive element to that project as well. That's going to include likely some interpretation of the former ordnance yard, which was on the location of where Purdy's Wharf is now, and some other historic elements, including the old town wall, for instance. So certainly lots of other opportunities going on around the district as well to tell those types of stories.
Great, thank you both. We did also get a question about whether or not the questions asked so far of HRM's heritage staff will be posted along with their answers for public consideration. So as mentioned previously, we will be recording this session, and it will be on our Shape Your City Halifax website, so that all of our questions and answers that you're hearing today will be there. And we're out of questions, so I will give a few more minutes if anyone has any further questions. Please feel free to write them in now. So we did have one more question come in, and I'll direct this one to Aaron. We is wondering whether or not the planners for the new presently proposed Art Gallery of Nova Scotia have been consulting HRM staff with the elevate. They're in particular asking about the elevation of the first floor of the building.
So I would say no to that. Essentially, these two projects are not really well aligned from a time frame perspective. the plans for the new art gallery, as I understand it, were quite well advanced previous to us really getting going with the Downtown Heritage Conservation District. It's hard to say how it may impact that project going forward, or how you know, the implications of that project on ours. But I would say things such as sea level rise would be regional level, a regional level consideration that might be considered under the regional plan review. And it's hard to say how that might impact a project such as the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia. Certainly something that we can maybe have a bit of a look at through any regulatory changes that we make as part of the Heritage Conservation District, but really that's a much bigger picture issue that we need to look at across the entire region.
Great, thank you, Aaron. Next question will be for Seamus, and that is, will you be consulting heritage groups?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Heritage Trust of Nova Scotia is identified as one of our key stakeholders, for sure, and we'll be consulting, you know, many different organizations throughout the you know, this year and into next year, to ensure that we acquire the appropriate feedback. We can hold meetings, public meetings, whether they be virtual or now in person, as we move to more back to a more in-person meeting world. We could certainly have meetings with any heritage organizations aside from the Heritage Trust of Nova Scotia that want to meet with us or discuss any project ideas they have. And as Elizabeth mentioned, the Heritage Advisory Committee, the HRM Heritage Advisory Committee, consisting of volunteers interested in heritage matters, and two councillors on that committee, will be updated regularly throughout this process to ensure that they're aware of the directions we're taking with the plan, so that the Heritage Advisory Committee will certainly be involved every step of the way in this process. Thank you.
And I should note as well that the Heritage Trust of Nova Scotia did provide a significant amount of assistance at the early stages of the project, helping with some analysis that was done as part of the background study. We certainly look forward to working closely with them moving forward, but also with property owners, business owners in the area, the Downtown Halifax Business Commission, Discover Halifax, Destination Halifax, and Develop Nova Scotia, among others.
Perfect, thank you both. Next question I'll direct to Aaron. It's just a constituent that is concerned about the protection of the Memorial Library. If we can provide an update on the status of that property.
Sure. So as Seamus mentioned earlier, that property was officially registered in 2019, so it's now protected under the Heritage Property Act of Nova Scotia. Currently, the property is owned by HRM, but there is some historic interest by the province in the property. And the big challenge right now is trying to find an end use for that property that is appropriate, you know, given the fact that there is upwards of 4,500 people buried on that site dating back to the late 18th century. So lots to consider, certainly lots of archaeological concerns. There's also First Nations burials that we know exist on the site. So trying to work sensitively toward finding an end use that will be appropriate and keep that site certainly open to the public and keep its open space aspects as we move forward. Still a lot of work to do there.
Great, thanks, Aaron. And Seamus, what is the timeline for implementation?
So as I mentioned during my presentation, the project is broken up into 3 main phases. The background study was approved back in May 2021. We expect the next phase, which is planning and community engagement, to be complete by around this time next summer. So we'll have a draft all the documents, including the plan, the bylaw, and amendments to the municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw. By this time next summer, we'll be holding a second public meeting around that time, similar to this one, but probably in person, hopefully. And then move into the third phase, which is the review and adoption phase of the documents. So the moving through the committees of council, and starting in September of 2022. And we expect that those documents will be moved through all the committees and go before council in a public hearing. And by May of 2023, so it'll be a 2-year process from start to finish. And then after regional council, when and if there's approval of these documents, then the only thing that remains will be the ministerial review, and that could take anywhere from 2 months to longer. But the Heritage Conservation District Plan is not in force or in effect until we get the ministerial sign off. So it'll likely be a few months from May of 2023 will be the completion deadline. Thank you.
Thanks, Seamus. I'll just ask a follow-up question to that to you. Will archaeology policies be included in the plan?
Yeah, our archaeology is really the purview of the province, the Special Places Act, and the Department of Communities, Culture and Heritage. So they oversee the permitting for archaeological digs, and what we do at the municipality is to ensure that any permits that are issued, we ensure that the people applying for the permits to dig, that they contact the appropriate people at the province to ensure that they have the right permits in place for the archaeological digs. In terms of the city plan, what we could do is include some interpretive materials around any finds or discoveries made. We could help to educate the public about archaeological resources that are found. But in terms of the regulation of archaeology, it's strictly a provincial mandate and not a municipal mandate here in Nova Scotia. Thank you.
And as part of the Culture and Heritage Priorities Plan as well, we are working quite closely with the province to try and find some role for the municipality to try and strengthen the provisions of the Special Places Act where we can. But certainly, as Seamus mentioned, it's under provincial purview.
Perfect, thank you both. Aaron, is there any intention to recognize the Cheapside Market area?
Absolutely. So as Seamus mentioned, those historic open spaces, previous rights of way areas that have that type of historic interest that are also have been open spaces for a long time, I think will be a very important aspect to this Heritage Conservation District, and they're going to be somewhat unique as compared to the other districts that we have already created elsewhere in downtown Halifax. So places like wharves, historic open spaces like Grand Parade and Cheapside Market, I would say, very important to the plan.
Perfect. All right, so seeing no further questions, we'll start to wrap up the Q&A session. Thank you everyone for your questions and your comments. Have the next slide, please. So again, thank you everyone for your time and attention this evening. We look forward to continuing to engage with you. Please feel free to provide any additional feedback that you may have, again, through our Shape Your City Halifax website. Thanks.